you'll be able to hear me. Thank you very much, Bob, for the introduction. And I'm glad to be here today. My husband is he's in Kono, and I'm in Kampala, but we thank God. Today, the topic, as has been given you, is walking in sexual purity. Bob, did you get the reading done or not? I was off, my laptop went off, so yes, I'm not sure whether you did the reading.
Excellent. Yes, the reading was done.
Okay, so we are reading from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and it's coming from between verse 3 and verse 7. The light in the darkness, walking in sexual purity. So this passage, some of the headings say living to please God. Another one called it instructions regarding sexual purity. And I want to call it commandments, commandments from God, a commandment from God regarding how we are to walk, especially in this sexual problem. I call it a problem. It's a good thing, but sometimes it becomes a problem, sexual purity. So he begins in chapter 4, verse 1 says, as for other matters, brothers and sisters, we instructed you how to live in order to please God. Now we ask you and urge you, I want those two words, we urge you. Some other versions say, we exhort you. And he's talking to brethren. I want you to note that, because sometimes we throw these words out to people who are not saved, but he was talking to Christians. They were not supposed to do certain things like other people. You brethren, we are urging you, we are exhorting you, that is in verse 1. Now we ask you in the Lord Jesus to do this, for you know what instructions we gave you by the authority of the Lord Jesus. It says continue. Other versions say abound more and more. So it's a reminder that you have received from me all these things. I have talked and talked and talked. Now I'm telling you again and again. What is the purpose of the walk? How are you supposed to walk as a Christian? And the command is that we're supposed to please God. We are not supposed to please ourselves. In everything we do, we're supposed to be pleasing God. So now he's calling them to what I call purity, a pure life. He says, I want you to be blameless. I want you to be upright. And I get this from Job chapter 1, verse 1. For some reason, I've been speaking a lot, and every time it just points to the same thing. Job was described as a blameless and upright man. So when you think of sexual purity, you are also thinking the same. Being blameless, being upright, shunning evil, holding fast onto the Lord and following him. Now King Hezekiah also, the same thing. One of the kings said, he was holding fast onto the Lord. He did everything right in the eyes of the Lord. He followed him and kept his commands. Okay, so as we talk about the light in the darkness, we are the light of the world. That's what the word, the Matthew 5 says. You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Light shines in the darkness. Out there, it is really dark. People are doing terrible things. And for us as Christians, we're supposed to give out the light so that others can see. The world is in darkness. And he pulls us out of this dark world and puts us into a world which we are not supposed to be of the world. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. So he's telling us, you need to live a pure life. So I go to Romans 12:2, says, do not conform any longer. To me, I think these people were conforming a little bit. It says, don't do it anymore. So I'm here to tell you today, don't do that anymore. Don't conform to the world anymore, to the patterns of the world. What are the patterns of the world? Okay, I'll be talking about them. But you are supposed to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, what is good and his perfect will. And so verse 3 of 1 Thessalonians 4 says, it is God's will that you should be sanctified. And you see, I've just read, be transformed so that you may be able to test and approve what God's will is. So here really we are talking about God's command, his will, what he wants us to be, how he wants us to please him. He wants us to live a life of purity. There are 7 things that come to mind when I think of purity. You can note them. One is to have a mind that thinks holy thoughts. A mind that has been transformed into thinking holy thoughts. Pure enough to see God. He said, no one will see God unless they are pure. I would like to see God. I want to be pure. And then number 3, bearing God's scrutiny instead of escaping his sight. And this comes from Psalm 139. Verse 23 and 24 says, I want for the God to come and say, he's looking at me, he's scrutinizing me, and I'm not going to run away from his sight because I am righteous. He made me righteous and I'm walking that way. Number 4, the passions are there, the desires are there. But am I able to control them? There'll be things that I'm looking at and I'm like, I want to get that. I want that right now. I want it. And he says we should be able to control those passions and desires. That's a life of purity. Number 5 of a life of purity, knowing and being guided by God's will. As he says in verse 3, it is God's will that you need to be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality, knowing and guiding from God himself. Knowing this is what he wants me to do. And then number 6, being pure and blameless before Christ. And number 7, walking in righteousness. I like the fact that God puts on us things that we don't deserve by his grace. We don't deserve the things he's putting on us of purity, of righteousness. But he says, I'm putting it on. Wear it and walk in it. Okay, so we are commanded. We are commanded, those are 7 things, live a life of purity. So it is a command. Therefore, any command from God, we need to be obedient. And what does he say? Abstain, avoid, those are the words he uses, avoid sexual immorality. And then 2, he says, know how to possess your vessel in sanctification and honor. Other versions say that each of you should learn how to control your own body in a way that is holy and honorable. So abstaining or avoiding, and 2, learning how to control your body, possessing your vessel in sanctification and honor. It's amazing that on Sunday I was talking about vessel of honor. I was talking to Alabaster ladies. They had a nice luncheon and their topic was vessels of honor, So if this is my vessel that God has given me, my vessel of honor, I'm supposed to actually honor it. It's supposed to be a vessel that has been sanctified. Now he's talking to these people who are living in a context of the Roman Empire. And in those days, the Romans, their view of sex was very different from the Christian view. And I found this, says they kept out and go and find prostitutes and have fun with them just for fun, just for pleasure. 2, they kept mistresses for the day-to-day needs of the body. That one will satisfy me whenever I want. Sometimes here we call them friends of benefit. You call them up when you need to have sex with them. And they are their mistresses. And then you keep wives for the faithfulness and guardianship of our house. I can assure you in our society, those people in darkness, as we call them, those people who are not saved, the way they live. And the wife, is supposed to stay at home. When I give birth, I take the children there and she looks after them. She cannot refuse. And some of you have said, bring that child. I tell you, what can I do? You bring that child who has been born out of wedlock. You are the faithful wife who is staying in the home. And you are very sure that is cheating on you with other women. And people think it's normal. And when these mistresses are not doing good enough, they go and buy a prostitute, go out in the hotel or during lunch time and have that pleasure that they want for fun. So that was the normal day-to-day way of doing things. So as Christians, we have a different resource. That people in darkness have a different resource also. And they are okay with it. They're in darkness. They do evil, wicked things. But we Christians have spiritual resources that are supposed to make us walk pure in God. So there's no excuse. You cannot say, for me, I'm human. You are human. But God knows that as well, because he's the one who made you and he sanctioned you. He put you into a place where he commanded you to avoid sexual immorality. If he knew that that could not happen, then he would not have told you to do so. So we're supposed to live very different in comparison to those who walk in darkness. Very different. But some of you come to work, like I'm at work right now, and nobody knows that you are saved. Nobody knows that you are Christian. So you do what they do and you fit in. You go to club. Some people go clubbing. Some people go partying. And they are drinking and doing all kinds of things. Okay, so we are supposed to live differently. So then the next question I ask, what then is sexual immorality? Because it's saying you should avoid sexual immorality. So I want to package it. What is sexual immorality? And the standard for avoiding sexual immorality is the same standard for everyone. Some of the things that I've read call it a seductive strength. There's so much seducing here. You can be pulled into the pit of sexual immorality very, 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 very easily. So we need to be very clear. One, we talk about fornication. Fornication is any unlawful kind of sexual intercourse. And I've added any unlawful kind of sexual intention, because some people don't get into the sexual intercourse, but they are intending, they are going towards that way. So cohabitation becomes a sin, becomes wicked, becomes evil in the eyes of the Lord. Fornication, having sex before you are married. You're supposed to enter marriage when you be sexual immorality. Anybody you have sex with or relate with in a sexual way, that is not your spouse. That is adultery. Then I put in masturbation. Many people want to get away with that and say, that one is not a sexual sin. It is a sexual sin. You are not supposed to have sex with yourself. Otherwise, God would have also sanctioned and said, we don't need marriages. You can satisfy yourselves. That is not acceptable. Masturbation these days, people are using all kinds of things, I can assure you. They go into using objects, they use other people, they use groups. Oh, this is filthy, very bad. Then we have number 4, which has come with internet, which has come with media, pornography. And some people in their homes, they are like, for us, it spices up our marriage. And I'm telling you, no, pornography is part of sexual immorality. You are watching scenes that are not good, that are, people having sex with each other online, live pictures, all those things. They infiltrate the mind and your mind is corrupted. As a result, we said, do not conform to the patterns. These are the patterns of the world. People are out there cohabiting. People are out there in adultery. Many people have many wives, many husbands even now. And then number 5, that I thought would describe what I'm thinking of sexual immorality, is also impure thoughts, allowing our minds to be filled with lust. This I discovered many years ago, that men, the way they think is very different from women. So I'm going to describe something that I really don't know, but every time I say it, the men say, yes, that's what happens. So men have the capability of seeing a woman, let's say, walking on the street. They may not even know her. And they get this woman and put this woman in their head, at the back of their head, in their mind. Then they go to sleep at around midnight, and they bring this woman out from the back and put her in the front, and then start undressing her, start having sex with her. And, the thoughts go and go and go. These are what we call impure thoughts. They are thoughts that are being put live into something that is sexual. By the time they are finished, it's like they've had sex with somebody. Those impure thoughts, that's what we call lustful thoughts, are not good. They're supposed to be repented of. Number 6, bad touches. When we are talking to young children, we tell them nobody should touch you. Where? They should not touch your private parts. They should not touch your breast. They should not touch your bottom. Now you find these men, you are in a lift and somebody puts his hand out and gives you a pat on the back. But let it not be a Christian who is doing this. Bad touches. And some of you are doing that. Or you hold the hand and then you start scratching it. A Christian, you are saying hello to me, and then you are making that's intention. That's why I said any unlawful kind of sexual intention is a sin. Okay. Number 7, I want to add this because it leads to sexual immorality. Filthy talk, filthy language. There's language which is really, really so bad. It is sexual, and there are people who are used to this kind of language. So their mind is filled with those kind of thoughts of bad stuff happening. And then we have also a new one which is connected to pornography. It's called sexting, where you send messages of sex to people. And I've had people who come and talk to me one or another, either on phone, and they tell me, yeah, I send these messages. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm not doing anything wrong with them. But you're sending nude pictures, you're sending, terrible things on an SMS or a WhatsApp. All that is unlawful kind of sexual intention. And sometimes it has been called uncovering the nakedness of another person who is especially not your spouse. Now, all these things lead to uncleanliness. It means you have rejected God. Actually, in our passage, it said something like that. You are rejecting God. Sometimes it leads to sexual addiction. Some of us as counselors have worked with people who are sexually addicted. They are going from one woman to another every single day because of what they have got into. Someone gave me a call this morning. I think it was a newspaper person, and was asking me, why is it that rich people's children are getting into addiction? And I said, well, I don't think I have an answer for that, rich children's. But you see, when you get addicted to something, it means it's making you feel good. And every time you want to go back to it, and these sexual things have a tendency of making you feel good. You touch something and you feel good. So tomorrow you want to touch it again, and you want to touch it in another way. So the sin will catch up with you. There's a lot of selfishness, and we are not selfish as Christians. That sin at some point will catch up with you. So the consequences of this can be you can get pregnant, but people say, those things, Mrs. Sen, you don't even mention. These days there are pills, these days there are things, these days there are things I can use. I will not get pregnant. So you don't see the pregnancy. So you don't know that they are sinning. Then STIs and diseases, I'll go to the doctor. They'll give me, I'll use condoms. Diseases? No, I'll not get them. Okay? And sorry, there's another to my 8 things that I talked about sexual immorality. I want to add, because they are also what we call sexual perversions. There's bestiality, having sex with animals. There are people who are so close to their dogs, their cats, their cows, and they get sexual with them. Then there is LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, transgender, queer, homosexuality. All those are in there. their sexual perversion. You know, some people say, me, I'm having sex with a woman. They told us not to have sex with men. So people have all kinds of excuses, but it is sexual immorality. And they're telling us we should we are not supposed to go there. Avoid completely. Do not go there. So it reminds me of Potiphar's wife. You remember Joseph? Joseph was working in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife comes. She was wicked. I don't want it to be like Potiphar's wife. What did she do? This is how she began. This is how people begin. You cast a longing eye on Joseph. You see him every day. You're like, wow, he looks good. He looks nice. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking about a woman, but this also happens to men even more. You see this girl and you're like, wow, this house girl who works in you, she's always passing by you. She's very kind to you. She's very nice. Now she's beautiful. She's passing by, and cast a longing eye on Joseph. The second thing she did was to ask him to lie with her. Went as far as asking, please lie with me. The intention now. And then Joseph refused. So she physically grabbed Joseph. He physically grabbed Joseph, okay? And Joseph ran away. So this Potiphar's wife was a wicked woman, self-centered, full of lies, should avoid. So she dwelt on herself. She dwelt on her desires. She failed to control her passion. She failed to hold them back. She hurt her family. She hurt her friends. Okay? And these days, you know, the DNA stories that have come up. So after staying with this woman for 20 years, you have children who are about 20 and below. And then you say, these children are not mine. Let's go for a DNA test. So there's a lot of unfaithfulness that is also occurring in marriages. There are children that are being born outside your home. And there are also many other sexual perversions. So he says, in a way that is holy and honorable, not in passionate lust like the pagans who do not know God. And that in this matter, no one should wrong or take advantage of a brother or a sister. The Lord will punish all who commit such sins, as we told you and warned you before. So there is punishment for those who are doing wrong. For God did not call us to be impure, but to live a holy life.
So looks like having network challenges with Dr. Ruth. So she bounces back on. Let me check if she's back on yet. Yeah, she's back on. Yes, you can unmute.
My apologies. I told you I'm using my phone, and I actually warned Professor Taimba that I might have trouble with internet. So what to do now, the practical things. And I love this because this is what I do in my counseling career.
Sorry about the network challenge. I'm sure the fact that it's a phone, there must be calls coming in, something like that. I request Reverend John to jump in the meantime as we wait for her to come back on. Professor John, are you able to jump in the meantime?
Thank you. Thank you so much. We want to thank the Lord for this message. It is an eye-opener